Hello grapplers and welcome to a new video. I always talk about playing defensive, how Zangief is a very defensive character due to the speed of the buttons, how you have to generally play around the SPD, but today we're going to talk about briefly how to be more aggressive with Zangief, because this is an aggressive game. There are patterns you need to recognize in order to start your aggressiveness. The first one is pretty common and it happens a lot, and this is something I've seen a lot of people not punishing really because they don't recognize it. Generally people want to stay away from Zangief, with a few exceptions like Kami, that she needs to play very close, but other characters and even her has some buttons to stop that, but people generally want to keep Zangief at bay. So one thing you need to recognize very fast is if your opponent is crouching, block crouching, because they need to walk back. And every time someone walks like this, you know what's that? That's a very easy sweep. And even if your sweep is not necessarily a punish counter sweep, which is the one that gives you the best Oki, it's not like the super long plus 40 you get from a regular sweep, but you can still at least do one dash and be +9. And you can also just drive rush and be around +6 depending on what you want to do. So it's not a bad thing to just do this and close the gap. And from here, even though you're +6, it might not be the best, you still have a good standing medium punch here to catch everything, standing medium kick, and you can react with the recovery frames into the eye if they go for a DI, for example. So you are pretty plus in order for you to start your offensive. The other thing that you need to recognize also kind of fast is if the opponent is jumping my SPDs and what is that person doing against my SPDs. The optimal way to deal with SPD is not jump forwards, neutral jump or back jump. It's actually backdash. So always remember that. If that happens, that person really knows the matchup and you have to be more careful with your SPDs. If they are not jumping, let's say they're super scared, you landed 1, 2 or 3 SPDs, you can do things that are not necessarily safe, and this happens even at the highest level. So if you get an SPD and this person is not pressing button, nor drive rushing, nor back dashing, you can just drive rush again, let go of the drive rush, SPD again. Ideally you want to use light SPD because you get a +30 compared to the +28 of the other SPDs. So this is slightly better for you in terms of frames. So you can more easily do this into another light SPD. And even if they wake up with a button, depending on the button they use, they can sometimes not stop you. Like if they wake up with a light, you can still drive rush, be close enough and grab the light. So that's another thing you can just do. One button that you can use against people is a standing medium punch. On block, drive rush, as you know, this is +2 and this has a gap that they can only use a drive reversal, Shoryuken, super there. So they need to generally respect this, especially if they don't want to use the meter. Especially low on drive rush, let's say around over here, 3 meters or 2 meters, you can really be more aggressive with Zangief. They only have 1 DP they can use and then they have just 1 drive meter, and I don't think people want to just beam burnout with a DP. That happens, but that's not a good sign. We're gonna talk about that in a few seconds. But if you do this, you'll see that you're chipping away the drive meter, even doing 2, if you're -6, but here it's very difficult for people to punish this, and you'll see that slowly you're taking away the drive meter. And that is pretty good for you. So standing medium punch is actually one of the buttons you can use the most if you want to be a more aggressive Zangief. Because the other ones are very defensive, like crouching medium punch, standing medium kick and crouching medium kick are very defensive pokes, I'd say. But standing medium punch, you can convert it to be more aggressive. Now the obvious one, you know I have to mention this, but headbutt is probably the most aggressive command normal you have. Aggression with headbutt has to be controlled, because sometimes people do this. And that is not real. This is a 14 frame move into a 6 frame move into another 14 frame move, and this is +1 on block. So basically 2 gaps and now you have a 13 frame gap. That is a lot. How do you keep the aggression going for a headbutt? What should you do? How do you mix up your headbutts? First of all, leave no gaps. With this, remember the spacing of this thing is very bizarre, so even though you're -3, you can use this to bait more buttons. So if they're pressing something that can whiff, depending on the button of course. You can also just go crazy with another headbutt, because if you really think about it, if you do this into crouching light punch, you're leaving a gap for the crouching light punch, but this crouching light punch doesn't give you much. It's just better to do this into another headbutt, because if the second headbutt connects, assuming they're very scared or they want to jump, you can visually confirm the second headbutt going to Hellstab Lariat. And of course, the classic this one. Basically a better hit confirm window for you if you really want to open up your opponent. However, this is -3 on block, so what is my recommendation? If you really want to be aggressive with headbutt, just go for another headbutt. You're gonna leave a gap no matter what, for crouching light punch or whatever, so just go into another headbutt. The other way is just doing something like this. Remember that you can mix this up with a walk into something, like standing medium kick, or you can just do this, and you are in range for light SPD, so you can do this. Remember, this is -3, but you can do this SPD, or do this another headbutt, and from that headbutt you can go into another headbutt, and so on and so on. So you can do sequences like this. As you know, every gap allows your opponent to do something, so have that in mind every time you go for something like this. And also remember that if you drive rush headbutt, you're +8 on block. Well, in this case it was +9 because I was a little bit far, but if you go for headbutt on block, that is +8. So this changes things a little bit, because now you have way more things to do. You can technically do this without a gap, so I guess that is better in a way, because you're now +1 in range for SPD. So you can be even crazier and just go for headbutts. The only light I feel you can use as a poking aggressive tool is crouching light punch, because this can get pretty obnoxious. Don't need to do the chain. If you get used to delaying your crouching light punch, let me put this guy to do crouching light punch. If you get used to delaying this one, you can get a combo. So that is the button you have to use most of the time if you want to be aggressive, because it's fast, 6 frames, faster than obviously headbutt, standing medium punch. So this is a really good button to just annoy people with. You just get used to the timing. Even this, you can whiff punish with crouching light punch really if you're close, like this. And at least you get a standing medium kick most of the time. Of course, you can go into better pokes like this, and so on and so on. So it has a good synergy with standing medium punch. So this is a button you absolutely have to get used to, delaying it or not. This is a button that will help you get a lot of matches. You have to use it. People kind of mistake the concept of being aggressive with doing dry brushes, doing this. And while this is aggressive, it is not necessarily an aggression that will get you somewhere, because at best you can do this. You don't recover all the 3 meters you use, you have to dry brush again, so essentially you're living all the time with the same meter. So this is not a good idea, especially when you go for something like this, which is sadly something I see very often for Zangief players. They go for this, and then SPD or something, and that they are in burnout. No, you don't need to spend your dry meter all the time to be aggressive. You just need to show that you're aggressive by poking, walking forwards, anti-airing correctly, using headbutt. And of course, if the opponent has low dry meter, you can be more aggressive. If they have, for example, 2.5 dry meters like now, doing a DP is very risky, because even though they will survive your pressure, they're very close to burnout. And even though Zangief is not necessarily the best character to take advantage of burnout, you do get a lot of frame traps in burnout, because if you're in burnout, everything is plus basically, so instead of this being +1 is +5, regularly +2, and everything becomes a frame trap into SPD. That's the idea of the burnout, or everything becomes a frame trap into health stab. Probably one of the most important things, and you might be thinking about this, is that sometimes when you're being too aggressive, people tend to jump, because it is an option they have. So they might want to jump forwards, especially in the corner. How do you deal with these people trying to survive here? The first thing is, what are they jumping out of? If you have a setup like this, and you go for a throw, you can time your OD lariat to hit cross-ups, but that is with lariat. What happens if you go for buttons? This is a very dicey situation for Zangief, because even if you jump back, you're not gonna catch them. So before getting into throws, especially from this, I would recommend poking first. You don't auto-correct, not even headbutt. You have to always be wary of people forward jumping if they're in the corner. Also backdashing, but it's more common to forward jump, because the danger of forward jump is not that high compared to backdash. Or wait. And you see them trying to jump away, you can jump back with light punch, jump back with medium punch, neutral jumping headbutt, or just jump back, Bosch dynamite. If you get used to this is very good. However, remember that you have to dry brush again. We don't have a DP. Crosscuts for us are not necessarily the best. It's worth noting again that regular throws are safer than SPD. So you can be aggressive with Zangief, but it's a situational aggressiveness. Keep the aggression going, ideally with pokes without using dry meter. And always keep an eye on the opponent drive meter to see how much you need to do before you can stop and maybe go even crazier with something like this. Boom. Because if they don't have a super low 1 or 2 or 3, there's nothing they can do against the headbutt DI. Now of course this doesn't mean you don't have to use your drive meter for DRCs, it's just that you have to be conscious of how much meter you have. As always, take care of yourselves. If you really like this video, please subscribe. Go to the Siberia Live on Twitch. We talk about several things, also play different games. Keep playing grapplers, hydrate, and I'll see you in the next one.